Isn't that awesome? Don't you guys love that? I love hearing stories of folks in our community who've experienced growth and change here. Now, my name is Andy Reider. I'm the community pastor here at Crossroads Dayton. And most of the time when I'm up here, I get to talk for a few minutes doing what Grant was doing, talking about some of the things that are up and coming around Crossroads. But today, I get the bulk of the time. So if you were really excited to hear our senior pastor, Brian, or Chuck Mingo speak, and you get up and start to leave, I will be personally very offended, because I got the mic today. Now, I thought what we'd do, since we have a little bit more flexibility today, that we get to know each other a little bit. And so I've got some questions for you guys, and this is going to require just a little bit of audience participation from you guys. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want to get your guys' thoughts and your response. Does that sound good? Yeah. All right. That was so much better than the 9:15 service. That was like, strong start, y'all. All right. So here's the first question. If I wanted to know, let's say, what kind of movies you're into, I would look at your Netflix. I think I heard VHS collection somewhere. Sure, whatever you're into. If I wanted to know which of your kids was the cutest, I would look at your Facebook, maybe. In my experience, Facebook is primarily for unsolicited political rantings and opinions, but maybe yours is just kinder and gentler than my friends. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. If I wanted to know what you spend your time on, I would look at your phone. Most people have actually said phone. I sort of thought calendar would be the thing, but yeah, that's where all of our calendars live anyway, on our phones. If I wanted to know what you spend your money on, I would look at your checking account, bank statement, credit card, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. If I wanted to know what it is that you want, I would look at your crickets. Yeah, it's a harder question. It's a harder question. It really is. Maybe you think you want to buy, so my Amazon shopping cart or whatever. But what do we want? What do we want? It's a harder question. It's a harder question. As I was sort of thinking about this, I thought maybe it's like, I don't know how many people in here have a bucket list. Maybe it's your bucket list, the things that you want to do before you kick the bucket. But like mine, at least, that's stuff that would be cool to do. My bucket list isn't like the things that I'm really going to measure my life by. It's just, that would be neat to do. That would be a cool place to see. So as I was thinking about this, like what has a little bit more urgency behind it? And I think it's maybe New Year's resolutions. How many folks in here in the last, let's say, 3 years have made a New Year's resolution in the last 3 years? Raise your hands. Okay, that's about statistically accurate. We are about representative of our country. Let me show you some stats on New Year's resolutions here. Now, these are the types of things that we sort of set as goals and promises for ourselves. 34% money related, 38% weight related, 31% relationship related, 47% self-improvement related. And the stats that I won't show you next is the likelihood that people are going to succeed 12 months later in seeing their New Year's resolution come true. And if you're anything like me, by March, I have ghosted at the gym, and I'm just like nowhere to be seen. But that's sort of indicative. The rate of people who have accomplished their New Year's resolution 12 months later is 8%, which for me, in my experience, is about 8% higher than I expected. But that I think says more about me than it does anybody else. But I think these New Year's resolutions, really what they are is us saying, 12 months from now, I want something to be different. 12 months from now, there's something that I want in the future that doesn't currently line up in my current reality. And there's a gap. There's a gap between what I hope for, what I expect, and what I'm experiencing. And I think if I were to give that gap, that space between what we want and what we have, if I were to give that gap a name, I think I would call it change. Change is what's going to be required of us to get to that thing. Change is what's going to be required of us if we want to get to our hopes, our ambitions, our dreams for our life. And it's hard. There's good news and there's bad news in this. I personally have come to believe that change is not complicated. Change is actually very simple. as I think we're going to see today, change is simple, but it's really hard. Change is simple, but it's challenging. Now, before we go any further, we're going to be spending our time talking about what it takes to change and what it looks like to change. But before we do that, I want to pray for us. God, help my words to be helpful today. Help me to be clear, and help us to get a greater sense of what you have for us, a greater sense of what the future could hold and how we can orient our lives now in the direction of the change that you want to bring into our lives. Amen. Now, I want to be really, really clear about something. So if you sort of tune out for everything else I'm about to say, this is my claim for the day. That I want you to pursue more intentional growth, because I believe you could be one journey and 5 weeks away from a changed life. I really believe that. I know that might seem too good to be true, or might just seem like, you just got to say that because you're the guy on stage doing the thing. I really believe that to be true. But, as I said, change is simple and difficult. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Let me start off. There's a verse that I want to just sort of highlight here. It's from John 10:10. This is Jesus talking to his people, you and me, saying this. He says, "But I have come so that they might have life and have it to the full." But I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. And I just think that's such an interesting way of articulating a thought. Like, I have come not just so they might have a good life, but a real good life. That's probably how I would have said it, but I'm not Jesus. And so that word full is really interesting. So I'm no Bible doctor, but I looked it up on the Google, and this word full actually full is kind of weak. It's not a great word. Some of your translations might say abundant, which I think is closer. But let me actually show you what this word means. It's perizos. It's a Greek, and it says meaning all around, excess, more than, abundantly, beyond what is anticipated, exceeding expectation, more abundant, going past the expected limit, more than enough. I don't care whether you've been in church 5 minutes or 50 years. How many of us are experiencing that? How many of us feel like we have the fullness of Jesus' promise for us going on in our lives? And particularly as we head into this journey, like that's why this is so important for us to look at the fullness of things like purpose in our lives, the fullness of things like play in our lives, and how we experience more of the fullness that Jesus came to offer. Does your life feel that kind of full, that kind of more than, that kind of abundant? Now, there was a time in my life, actually about 4 years into Rachel and I's marriage, where I just recognized, like, I was sort of confronted with this reality of, like, I don't feel abundant. I don't feel more than. I don't feel exceeding expectations. My life is great. Like, if you were to look at my Instagram feed or talk to me and like, hey, what's going on with you? All great stuff that was happening in my life. And I feel like I was present for like 15% of it. I felt like I was engaged in 15% of my life, and so much was just going over my head or going right past me. And here's some examples. If you were to ask me, this is about 4 years into my marriage, if you were to ask me, hey, Andy, what's going on with you? What do you have on the calendar? I would say, oh man, it's been amazing. I'm heading to Israel. I'm heading to the Holy Land, and I'm gonna record music for a Crossroads thing. It was an incredible, once-in-a-lifetime experience. We got to make music in the Holy Land. I'm a musician, by the way. Make music in the Holy Land. It was incredible. We recorded a song on a boat on the Sea of Galilee in a storm. It was crazy cool. 3 days later, after I got back from that trip, my wife and I, Rachel, we left for a motorcycle trip that was going to take us through South America and Patagonia and the Andes and all the way down to the southern tip of South America. It was a bucket list thing. It was something I dreamed of doing, and we got to do it. We got to make that happen. And then, months later, we found out we were pregnant right in the midst of that. And months later, the birth of our first child, named Ella, who's incredible. And it was that one that cued me that something wasn't right, that something was wrong. That the joy of bringing a new life into the world, that I just wasn't there for all of it, that I was missing out on something, that I wasn't fully present, that I wasn't fully joyful, that I wasn't fully living my own life. And it was at this point, honestly, that I thought something was wrong with me. I started doing some research, and just pro tip, if you ever think something is wrong with you, don't start Googling. Just don't do it. You're not going to come back thinking that you are in any kind of okay shape. You're going to think that yeah. So I was convinced that I either had some sort of low-lying, kind of under-the-radar depression, undiagnosed depression, or undiagnosed ADD, or something that was sort of keeping me from processing my life as it happened. And so much so that I did research and ended up meeting with a counselor, and he gave me tests to take and assessments, and even met with my wife to ask her about sort of how I process and her experience of me, and a family member, and a whole thing. And at the end of this whole long process, he sits me down and says, "Hey, I've seen all I need to see. I have sort of my conclusion." He said, "I am convinced that you don't have ADD or anything else. I'm convinced that you just aren't taking the time and energy to work on how you experience your life, on how you process the things that are happening to you. I don't think there's anything wrong with you. It's just you need to change how you experience your own life." And there's some tools that we can talk about how to do that. But really, if I'm going to be honest, you might think, great, that's fantastic news. There's nothing wrong. You don't need to be on medication for the rest of your life. You don't need ongoing treatment for anything. But frankly, I was pissed. I was like, sure, I know you went to school for this forever and have been practicing for a very long time, sir, but me and the Google, we know more than you do. I was like very resistant to this. I pushed back. I wanted him to prescribe something, or I wanted him to come up with some kind of fix for me. And as I processed that, kind of got out of the situation a little ways, as I processed that, really what I wanted change, but I wanted an external fix rather than the internal work that change was going to require of me. I wanted a pill, I wanted a treatment, I wanted something external to come in and address my situation so that I wouldn't have to do the hard work of internal change. Now, for me, there's some writings that I actually stumbled on in the midst of this time that I want to share with you, because it really goes along with this theme that change isn't is simple, but it's difficult. And so if I can highlight my point here, I'm going to say I'm going to give you the key here. This is written first in the 1960s by a psychologist named David Gleicher, and sort of adapted since. But this is, simply put, a formula for change. Let me put this up here. This should be clear everything up for you. C equals V times D times F is greater than R. Cool? We can all go home? Great? Everybody got that? Let me unpack this for you here a little bit. What this says, C is change. Change equals vision times dissatisfaction times first steps. When those things are greater than the resistance to that change, you will experience change. And for me, I think this isn't just the writing of a psychologist who has sort of observed thousands of people navigate aspects of change in their own lives. I think these are spiritual principles, spiritual waypoints for us to navigate as we pursue change in our own life. So, and I know what some of you are saying, but like maybe we'll just sort of align this with the play and purpose journey. Some of you might be thinking like, Andy, look, man, I'm doing all of the things. I'm working my fingers to the bone. I'm trying everything. I'm working my butt off, and I don't feel like I'm experiencing the fullness of God's purpose in my life, or the fullness of even my own gifts and skills in my work. And some of you might be saying, you know, Andy, I actually don't have that much going on. I'm all caught up on Game of Thrones. I'm all caught up on Stranger Things. I take my vacation time. I use it. And I still don't feel like I'm experiencing play and joy and fun in my life that's in alignment with that fullness that Jesus promises. And so I have some data here that I think is gonna clear all of that up for you. Let's put this first data set. The divorce rate in Maine correlates with per capita consumption of margarine. Cool? Everybody got it? All right. Second data set here. People who've drowned after falling out of a fishing boat correlates with the marriage rate in Kentucky. This is actual data. This is real. Okay, all the way up through 2010. This is my favorite. Number of people who've drowned by falling into a pool correlates with number of films Nicolas Cage has appeared in. So I think what we've learned is Nicolas Cage is dangerous to our pool safety. Got it? Okay. What I'm trying to say here is that correlation does not equal causation. Correlation does not equal causation. It doesn't matter if you're working really hard, if you're not working at the right things, if your energy and your effort aren't aligned in the right direction. And similarly, you might be having lots of fun and taking your vacation days and doing the cool things and missing out on God's goal for play and joy in your life. Now, let me go back to my original claim. I believe that you could be one journey and 5 weeks away from a changed life. And that might sound like a lie, that might sound like a marketing pitch, that might sound like an exaggeration. For me, it is the honest truth. It's the honest truth. Let me tell you guys a quick story here. So, it's a dating story. Is that cool? Yeah, half of you got less interested and half of you got more interested. The dates were really bad. I think that makes the rest of you interested again. Okay, so this is the story of me and my wife Rachel when we first started dating. We actually met at Crossroads. So singles, keep it up, man. There's hope for you. We met at Crossroads. Some friends introduced us, and we decided we were gonna have like the lowest bar date possible, which is of course coffee. Yes. So we met. It was like mid-afternoon coffee where we met there, and so could drive. Yeah, we didn't even have to drive together. So we met at a coffee shop, had like a pretty good conversation. I at least thought it went well enough that I was like, oh, I really like this girl. I would like to have more pretty good conversations with her. And so I figured to do that I would need to call her, and so I asked her for her number, and she said no. She said no. Which was great, and I'm like a pretty aggressive, bold, resilient person, and so it only took me 12 months to work up the courage to ask her out again, and at that point, I asked her out again, and she said yes. But here's some things you need to know about me at this period. You just need to understand that I was a catch, y'all. Total package. You want detail? Sure. So the first thing, I lived in my brother's basement, sure. Lived in my brother's basement. Second, I didn't have a job at the time. And third, I had 2 motorcycles and 2 cars, and none of them worked per se. I was in between jobs and in between goatees at the moment, but like it's just, we do what we can. Ask her out again. We go on date number 1. Not great. All the like normal first datey questions of like, what do you like to do? What kind of music are you into? What kind of movies do you like? Blah, blah, blah. Just like tanked. Like we just were not clicking. She was not into it at all. And first date, bad. Second date, worse. Third date, terrible. Fourth date, and keep in mind, I do not have a job. I do not have a car. I'm borrowing a car from someone I don't know very well, spending money I do not have to take her on actually pretty darn nice dates. So we're at this place. It's called De Felice. It's down in Covington, and it's like a jazz restaurant. Like there's like a legit jazz band, amazing jazz band playing in the background, white tablecloths, very nice, the whole thing. And I'm like just trying to ask these dumb questions, like dumb surfacey questions, like, well, what about this? Or have you seen Lost? Or whatever was cool at the time. And she's not into it. She's not into it. We're not connecting. So much so, and you'll learn in just a moment. My wife is a very direct person. And you can hear her giggling, because she knows how the story goes. So I said something, sort of asked some dumb question. She kind of just says, hey, don't you know that we're not having fun? Don't you know that we're not having fun? In case there was any question, I do now know that we were not having fun. So I literally just internally, emotionally, I kind of fetal position and just began to rock back and forth and cry. But externally, I just kind of smiled, pasted on, and, well, I do now. That's literally what I said. Literally what I said. The rest of the day didn't go spectacularly, as you could imagine. But let me pause there, because at that point in the story, something was happening at Crossroads and in our lives that is happening right now, and that is we were about to start the journey. We were within weeks of starting the journey. And the journey that year, who was around for the free journey? That's what it was called, the free journey? Yeah, a few of you. Awesome. The free journey was amazing. It was sort of the theme, so play and purpose is this one, but the theme for this one was identifying some of the fears and roadblocks that would keep us from meaningfully connecting with God and with other people. And what became very, very clear to me, there was a little assessment that you take, and it sort of would help you kind of point to what that roadblock might be for you. And mine was very, very clearly, it was an unwillingness to be vulnerable, an inability to be authentic and honest and be myself with people for fear of them not liking what they saw. And for me, that my whole life, that had crippled me from real relationships, from real friendships, from really getting to know people. And it's exactly what Rachel was responding to. She didn't care about what kind of movies I listened to. She didn't care about the normal first date conversations. She wanted to know me. She wanted to know who I was, what was really, really going on. And I'm really, really happy to say that journey was that was the training wheels for me learning how to enter into actual relationships, into actual deep friendships. And I'm really grateful to say into the most important relationship in my life. I'm not exaggerating here. I'm not exaggerating here. Without the free journey, I don't know that Rachel and I would be married. I don't think we would have been able to navigate that. And I don't think I would have learned how to be honest enough and open enough for any of the things that God wanted to do in my life. Now, I want to go back. To our formula here that we're going to spend some time on. Our formula is all about, I believe, the waypoints that God wants to point to along the way for us pursuing and experiencing change in our life. So let's go to the formula. Change equals vision times dissatisfaction times first steps. Vision. Let me tell you a story about vision. A buddy of mine is a really, really successful businessman, but his business is helping to see neighborhoods and communities restored. If you've been to any of the work that's happened in Over the Rhine in the last decade in Cincinnati, that has a lot of his fingerprint on it. They're restoring not just buildings, but rebuilding communities. Really, really proud to say that his firm is actually working in Dayton now to restore the Dayton Arcade, which is an incredibly beautiful and historic building that is going to be beautiful once again. But we were on a motorcycle trip and I was having a conversation with him, and he made a comment about, man, I just wish it hadn't taken me so long to realize that the same intentionality and the same strategic thinking and the same forethought that's helped my business to succeed would have helped my marriage succeed and would have helped my family be healthier. And so about a decade ago, he learned to take some of the same principles that he worked out in business and apply them to his family, and his marriage and his family have been all the better for it. So I said, dude, that sounds amazing. I want to hear a lot about that. And he said, okay, if you're really serious about it, call my office, set up a time, because we're gonna take a whole day, and we're gonna begin what is a months-long process in this. But I'll give you sort of the really, really short version of what he said. We actually met. We didn't meet in a conference room. We didn't meet at a coffee shop. We met at a cemetery. And as we talked, he said, hey, I want to tell you the words that most dictate how I think about my family and how I think about my work. He said this: start with the end in mind. Start with the end in mind. If you know what the end goal is, and you can take steps back from that, you can orient your life to help make those things happen. So whether it's a business plan or whether it's the kind of father that I want to be, I can start with the end in mind. This is the exercise that he gave me to sort of flesh out what that end was. He said, the end isn't a good life It's too vague. The end isn't to make X number of dollars. It's not valuable enough. What he said was, the end that you should have in mind is your own death. He said, imagine X number of years from now when you are under one of these gravestones. Imagine, what do you want people to say about you? What do you want to be true of you when you're no longer in this world? And here's his assignment. He said, write your own eulogy. Write your own eulogy. Write what a coworker would say about you when you're dead. Write what a friend would say, what your children would say, what your wife would say. Write the words that you want to be true at the end of your life so that you know how to spend your days now. And it's an incredibly difficult exercise. If you take me up on it and try that, it will be good for you and it will be really, really challenging. But that's starting with the end in mind, that end being the vision that you have for your life. There's a verse, it's from Proverbs, and it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think we read that verse and we just sort of intuitively nod. We say, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. But if we ask the more difficult question, which is, what are the areas in your life where you don't have clear vision? If that verse is true, then that part of your life, if it doesn't have clear vision, isn't thriving, it's withering, and is moving its way towards perishing. We need to raise the value and the level of vision in our lives if we want to experience change. The second part of our equation here is dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction. Change equals vision times dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction, this isn't just being angry all the time. This isn't your Facebook rants. This is you acknowledging, it could be the thing that gets you fired up. It could be the thing that you're frustrated about or that you see a possible solution for. You might be imagining something that doesn't yet exist. And I want to read you guys an example of there's another example from the corporate world, but where two companies worked together to see something new come into the world. This is from a press release. Taco Bell and Forever 21 are making wardrobes a whole lot saucier this fall. They'll come together to celebrate personal style and self-expression ahead of Taco Bell's first fashion collection collaboration. These two like-minded brands. What does that mean? I don't know. They both want to make money, I guess. These two like-minded brands together at the intersection of culture and innovation. Playing fast and loose with the English language here, guys. While they're at it, they'll help fans keep the heat up and the fun on in more ways than one. Clothes only keep you warm in the one way. It's just the one way. By capturing content that personifies forever Taco Bell, not a thing, the essence of the preview event, fans can actively take part in the ultimate fashion after party. Here's some quotes. Marissa Thalberg, Chief Marketing Officer at Taco Bell, said, "We often think of Taco Bell as the fast fashion of food." What? I don't even think of Taco Bell as the fast food of food. Now, given how we continuously introduce innovative, limited edition products that everyone can enjoy, so when it came to our first ever retail collaboration, we knew our partner had to be the leader in actual fast fashion. Again, not a thing. We've seen our fans get individually creative in expressing their love for Taco Bell through fashion. No, you have not, Taco Bell. You've seen sweatpants and more sweatpants. We are excited about this partnership, driven by trends and culture, merging fashion and food, and this collection gives our customers a new way to experience both our brands. It's terrible. And I bring this up because this is vision. This is a level of dissatisfaction. I am personally dissatisfied with this. But the deal is, dissatisfaction precedes vision. And if you are dissatisfied with something dumb, you will have a vision that is dumb. If you are dissatisfied only with things that aren't adding value, that aren't the things that you believe God has for you, your vision is going to fall way short of what it could be. As I was trying to think of a verse that would sum up this kind of dissatisfaction, there's actually a word that theologians use that I really like because it's stronger than dissatisfaction, but it's a holy discontent. It's a holy discontent. As I think about, I was trying to find, what's one verse that kind of gets it all right there, kind of sums it all up, and there's not one, and honestly, I feel like it would kind of cheapen it. Really, when I look at the pages of the Bible, every person that God did something special in, that God was able to move through had a level of holy discontent in their lives. They had a level of dissatisfaction that moved them towards action. This is Moses. This is Moses guy. He lived in Pharaoh's household, and then he saw one of his own people being beaten by a slave master, and something in him snapped, and he hauled off, killed the slave master, and then ran into hiding, only to come back and free not just that one individual, but all of God's people from Egypt. This is Jacob wrestling with God and wrestling with him physically and grappling and saying, I'm not going to let go until you bless me. I'm not going to let go until you bless me. This is even Paul, a guy who wrote most of the New Testament, a big chunk of the Bible, and he basically said, look, I've been shipwrecked. I've been beaten. I've been whipped within an inch of my life 3 times. There's danger. And let me just say, if you have to distinguish between whippings and beatings in your life, you have had a harder life than I have. But this guy's like that, and there's danger at the sea. There's danger in the countryside. There's danger in the rivers. There's crowds coming to get me. And I'm not going to give up. That's a level of dissatisfaction that's driving him to make decisions at cost to himself because he has a vision for what's possible and a level of dissatisfaction that drives him. For change to be possible in our lives, we need to up the level of dissatisfaction that we have. Now, our third piece of this equation are our first steps. Change equals vision times dissatisfaction times first steps. I was talking through this equation with a group of leaders around Crossroads, and one of them, who might be in this room right now, raised his hand and said, hey, can I interrupt you? I'd like to say something. And he's a teacher, and he's real smart, and I just knew he was going to pick apart the math of this, and so I said, no. And then he said it anyways, and I'm actually really glad that he ignored me. But he said, no, the way that equation is structured, if any of the values of V, of D, or of F are 0, then the whole equation falls apart. And what he was saying is, you can have all kinds of vision, all kinds of dissatisfaction, but if you are net 0 in first steps, change is impossible. And I think that's what we see a lot of in our world. We see people with great ideas. Great ideas are cheap. We see a lot of people with dissatisfaction. It's easy to be angry. What we don't see enough of is people willing to take a step, people willing to act. But nothing happens without it. There's a verse, it's James 1:22, and it says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. The reality is that you and I don't need to learn one more freaking thing for our lives to change. We already have more knowledge than we know what to do with. If we stopped learning right now and just did the things that we already know to do, our lives would be changed. I really believe that. It's not about knowing more. It's about increasing our level and our willingness to take steps. We don't need more information. We need more action. And when we raise the level of action and first steps in our lives, change becomes more possible. The last part of our equation is resistance. And resistance could be lots of things. Change equals V times D times F. When those things are greater than, when those things outweigh the resistance in our lives, the resistance to that change, we can experience change. And resistance takes lots of forms. It's your routines. They're ways your brain, the synapses in your brain have fired for enough repetitions that it's going to be difficult to change that direction. There's going to be resistance to that change. There's just your routines. There's your normal. There's the status quo. There's what's expected of you. There's what you expect of yourself. All these things are forms of resistance that we need to be aware of and need to be intentional of if we want to see change. But I quoted James 10:10 earlier. James 10:10, but I have come so they might have life. James 10:9 is the other half of the coin. If we believe what's in the pages of the Bible, we also have an enemy who actively resists and opposes change and growth in our lives. And James 10:10, James 10:9 says, but the thief has come only to kill and destroy. But I have come so they might have life and have it abundantly. You and I have been promised something incredible. You guys, we've been promised something amazing that overcomes resistance. And I'm not saying that the journey is the only chance that you're going to have to grow this year. It's not. To grow spiritually or grow otherwise, it's not the only one. But I do think for many of us, it might be the best one. It's being handed to us on a silver platter. There's going to be opportunities for you to grow individually, for you to grow in the context of community. It's going to be good for us if we decide we're willing to act, if we decide we're going to push through resistance and take a first step. I just say, make your decision now. Don't wait till later when I'll check what's on my calendar, or I'll see how it goes, or I'll see how I feel. Make a decision now. Be aggressive in the direction of growth, in the direction of change, in the direction of that fullness that Jesus offers. And I'll just say, like, are your children getting the best of you? Are your children getting the most purposeful and playful version of you? Is your wife or husband experiencing the most full version of yourself, the most free version of yourself? I know for me, I want my kids to experience a dad that isn't just get stuff done, that isn't just all purpose, but is purpose and play, that can lean into the fullness of what God has for me. I don't want my wife to miss out on some of the good things that God has designed in me that I need to grow into. I want you to be the wife that God intended you to be. I want you to be the husband that God intended you to be. I want you to be the mother, the father that God created capacity in you to be. I want you to be the employee, to pursue the dreams for your work that God has for you. I don't want us to miss out on something because we're either unwilling to change or not sure how to move in the direction of change. God wants change for us. He never gets tired of inviting us into opportunities to grow, into opportunities to mature, because he loves us, and he just never runs out of good things to give us. Never runs out. Don't miss a chance to be a part of the journey this year. I really believe it could change your life. Be willing to take that first step. Let me pray for us. God, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for a community that has a bias towards action. I'm thankful for a community that wants to see the growth and change that you have, that you've made possible for us. God, open doors and help us to raise the level of vision, of dissatisfaction, and of willingness to take first steps in our lives. I want us to be all that you put in us to be. We're grateful. Amen. Guys, thank you so much. Two quick things that I want to just let you know about. First, you might have questions about the journey, about what it looks like, or about other stuff around Crossroads, what groups look like, what different areas. We have a thing called experts. They're great folks that would just love to have a 5-minute conversation with you around these black tables right now, immediately after service. Would love to chat with you, answer any and all questions that you have about Crossroads. And secondly, on your way out, you'll get handed one of these little cards as a reminder that the journey is coming. Grab one and consider, who do you think would benefit from more play or more purpose in their lives? I think we all know a lot of people who could benefit from this. Have a fantastic week. We will see you guys next week, and then the journey starts on the 15th. Have a great one.